Forcing a United States citizen out of his home in freezing single-digit temperatures, wearing nothing but shorts and Crocs, isn't just a logistical error. It's a systemic operational default that has Minnesota officials pursuing felony kidnapping charges against federal ICE agents.
One of those investigations involves a victim by the name of Scott Tao.
Video of an ICE operation in St. Paul is sparking anger after agents took a man from his home wearing only shorts, Crocs, and a blanket in single-digit temperatures. Family members say the man is Chong Lee Scott Tao. ICE drove him around for about an hour, then let him go. Tao is a U.S. citizen whose mother was one of the first nurses treating injured American troops during the secret war in Laos decades ago. Homeland Security says he lives with two convicted sex offenders, adding, quote, the individual refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd. He matched the descriptions of the targets.
That statement makes me livid. Livid, because those sex offenders, we should absolutely get people who have broken the law, who've hurt other people. Those people do not live in this household with them. They are not a part of this family. That for ICE to put out a statement like that is irresponsible and it is reckless.
Tao's family sent a statement overnight saying he does not know the alleged sex offenders ICE is looking for, adding that Tao lives with his adult son, daughter-in-law, and grandson. They also say agents did not have a warrant and did not ask for his ID.
And this was the incident involving Scott Tao, a United States citizen who was forcibly removed from his home. And we believe that there was no legitimate legal reason for the federal agents to enter that home. It was not supported by probable cause and in violation of our United States Constitution. And then he was forcibly removed from his home and taken out in freezing weather in his Crocs and a pair of shorts. And I think the sheriff will talk a little bit more about that case, but there are pictures here with regard to that incident. And he was questioned in the car away from his home for, we think, for over an hour. We want to show the work that we have, but we also need that federal cooperation. And I think another more important part of your reporting today that's really important is that, so this case involves a felonious allegation of kidnapping, illegal detainment, right? False imprisonment. We are very, very interested in those types of fact scenarios.
We are witnessing a jurisdictional black swan event where the state of Minnesota is attempting to liquidate the qualified immunity of federal officers, treating an on-duty immigration sweep as a criminal enterprise of false imprisonment. While federal management claims their agents were simply matching descriptions, the forensic reality shows a total breakdown in internal controls, with agents operating without warrants, without identification, and in direct violation of the constitutional ledger. This isn't just a policy dispute. It is a hostile audit of the federal government's authority that could end with ICE agents in state custody, proving that even the color of law cannot redact the basic human rights of a verified citizen. If a federal auditor can be handcuffed by a state sheriff for illegal detainment, the entire master operating agreement of the United States is in a state of technical default. We are documenting the moment where the sovereign integrity of a state decided to reclaim the title to its own borders, setting the stage for a constitutional showdown that will determine if federal authority is an unchecked asset or a limited liability. I am Camilo Motato, and this is Camilo's House. As a certified public accountant focused on forensic verification, I don't look at the uniforms. I audit the chain of command and the statutory authority that justifies the use of force. In a standard audit, if a subsidiary, the state, identifies material breaches of the operating agreement, the Constitution, by the parent company, the federal government, you don't just verify the logs. You perform a full-scale criminal reconciliation to ensure that the liability of a wrongful arrest is properly allocated. Today we are auditing the unprecedented federal versus state showdown in Minnesota. We are analyzing the felonious allegations surrounding the detainment of Scott Tao, the systemic profiling reported by the Brooklyn Park Police Chief, and the impeachment ledger of Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison. This is the jurisdictional default audit, and we are documenting the moment where Minnesota decided to liquidate the immunity of the federal auditors. The operational breach that has triggered this criminal investigation is the case of Scott Tao, a United States citizen whose personal assets, his liberty and his security, were reportedly forcibly seized by federal agents in St. Paul. From an investigative standpoint, the materiality of this incident is built on a total lack of documentation. According to state officials and family members, federal agents entered Tao's home without a certified warrant and without even asking for his primary identification. Tao was taken from his residence in freezing single-digit temperatures, wearing nothing but shorts, Crocs, and a blanket. In forensic terms, this is a physical asset misappropriation. To remove a citizen from his private ledger without probable cause or documentary support is to create an immediate liability for the federal government. Homeland Security has issued a management response claiming that Tao matched the description of the target, specifically one of two convicted sex offenders they were looking for. They allege that Tao refused to be fingerprinted or facially ID'd, attempting to shift the burden of proof onto the victim. However, the forensic reconciliation provided by the family reveals a material discrepancy. The family has certified that the sex offenders in question do not live in that household and are not part of that family. For ICE to issue a statement linking a U.S. citizen to sex offenders without verifiable data is what state officials have labeled irresponsible and reckless. By detaining the wrong asset for over an hour in a car, federal agents have opened themselves up to a state-level prosecution for kidnapping and false imprisonment. The Minnesota authorities are very interested in these fact scenarios, signaling that they are ready to audit the auditors in a court of law. While the Tao case represents a single incident breach, the testimony of Brooklyn Park Police Chief Mark Bruley reveals a systemic control failure across the entire Minnesota market. Chief Bruley, a 30-year veteran of law enforcement, provided forensic testimony that Operation Metro Surge has eroded the trust equity that local police spent 6 years building. In a highly volatile disclosure, Bruley revealed that civilian employees and even off-duty police officers were being stopped without cause based on what appeared to be racial profiling. This is an operational inconsistency where the federal government's surge strategy is actively liquidating the social capital of local law enforcement. The most egregious audit finding in Bruley's report involved one of his own Brooklyn Park officers. This off-duty asset was driving with their child when unidentified federal agents performed a boxing maneuver to stop their vehicle. These agents wore generic police markings with no individual insignia, provided no identification, and concealed their faces. From a risk management perspective, this is a total breakdown of transparency. When the officer attempted to record the transaction with their phone, the agents liquidated the device by knocking it from their hands and drew their weapons. Only after the officer identified their professional status as a member of the Brooklyn Park Police did the agents withdraw from the engagement. Bruley's forensic verdict is that the mechanisms of accountability, body cameras, name tags, and identification, were broken or missing, creating a market of fear that targets individuals based on nothing more than a physical description profile. This infrastructure of secrecy has turned the public ledger against the federal government. When agents wear police vests without verification assets, the public misattributes the liability to local departments. Chief Bruley is sounding the alarm because his employees, who understand policing and the Constitution, are coming to him with fear in their eyes. This is a systemic risk to the national security framework. If federal agents are operating outside the legal guidelines, they aren't enforcing the law. They are creating a debt of community trust that local police will have to amortize for decades. The Brooklyn Park testimony proves that Operation Metro Surge has become a non-performing asset that is impairing the safety of Minnesota residents. While the boots on the ground are facing criminal charges, the senior management of Minnesota is facing a hostile audit in the form of impeachment hearings. House lawmakers, led by Representative Mike Weiner, have filed articles of impeachment against Governor Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison. From a forensic accounting perspective, this is a fiduciary breach audit. Weiner represents some of the poorest counties in the state and argues that the taxpayer dollars of his constituents have been squandered due to fiscal negligence. The materiality of this impeachment is centered on $9 billion in fraudulent transactions that federal prosecutors claim ran rampant under the Walz administration. The allegation is that the governor was aware of the fraud and willfully hindered the investigation. In auditing terms, this is a management override of internal controls. If the CEO of the state is aiding and abetting the misappropriation of $9 billion, then the entity is no longer operating in the interests of the shareholders. The Rules Committee is set to open the books on this impeachment next Wednesday at 10:15 a.m., marking a final reconciliation of the Wald's legacy as he prepares to liquidate his position at the end of the year. Representative Weiner is taking this seriously because the word frugality is literally inscribed in the chamber above his head, a compliance standard that he believes Walds has systemically ignored. The jurisdictional arbitrage of Keith Ellison is also on the hook for his oversight failure. The articles of impeachment target him for his role in protecting the fraudulent assets of Feeding Our Future and other scandalous subsidiaries. But Ellison is also the lead architect of the state-level criminal charges against the ICE agents. From a forensic integrity perspective, this is a conflict of interest. Ellison is prosecuting the federal auditors for kidnapping, while he himself is being audited by the House for failing to protect taxpayer capital. This is a tactical diversion, attempting to devalue the ICE surge to distract from his own systemic reporting failures. The Minnesota Freedom Caucus has confirmed that these hearings are moving forward, putting both Walz and Ellison in a state of legal deficit as the legislative session begins. The divided government market in Minnesota means that these articles of impeachment face a stiff headwind. With the House locked at 67 apiece, the Republicans need bipartisan support to pass the resolution. Some DFLers have labeled this political theater, arguing that it is a performative asset rather than a solution to actual problems. But as a CPA, I track the cost of theater. Every penny that goes to a fraudulent project is capital extracted from a productive stakeholder. Whether or not the impeachment leads to liquidation, the discovery process will disclose the deficiencies of the Walz-Ellison management team. They are facing a rebellion from members who take frugality seriously and are fed up with squandered dollars. The Rubicon of arresting federal agents is perhaps the most high-volatility event in recent Minnesota history. If Keith Ellison and the local sheriffs actually execute an arrest on on-duty federal agents, they are challenging the Master Operating Agreement of the United States. Under the Supremacy Clause in the Qualified Immunity Standards, federal agents are typically shielded from state-level prosecution for actions taken within the scope of their employment. To arrest them for kidnapping is to claim that their actions fell outside the scope of the law, effectively voiding their federal coverage. Minnesota is essentially testing the liquidity of federal immunity, and the federal government is not going to help them with this forensic extraction. My forensic verdict on the 2026 Minnesota showdown is that the state is currently in a state of total operational defiance. The arrest of the wrong asset in the Scott Tao case is a material error that requires a settlement, but the charging of agents with kidnapping is an overcorrection intended to impair the federal mission. The racial profiling reported by Chief Bruley is a critical control weakness that suggests the ICE surge was poorly managed and under-identified. We are looking at a systemic governance default, where the auditors are being prosecuted by the management. The impeachment of Walz and Ellison is the final reconciliation of an administration that has squandered trust and capital. Whether it is $9 billion in fraud or the boxing in of off-duty cops, the internal controls of Minnesota have defaulted. We are looking at a state portfolio that is deep in the red in terms of rule of law and fiduciary trust. The Wednesday Rules Committee hearing will be the first closing on this legacy of negligence. The American taxpayer is the residual claimant who will fund the legal fees for both sides of this civil war on the ledger. I want to hear from you. Should ICE agents be subject to state criminal law for operational errors? Or is a kidnapping charge a material misstatement of their authority? Is the impeachment of Tim Walz a necessary audit of fiscal failure? Or is it performative politics in a divided market? Let me know in the comments. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the sovereignty of your home and the integrity of your border are sitting on the negotiation table. I am Camilo Motato, and this is Camilo's House. Subscribe to stay informed on the numbers, the laws, and the truth behind the headlines. Stay safe.